Welcome to the Expert Edge. This is the show where we bring on experts in their different fields of health and wellness practice to hear their stories and learn what they see working in the field of diabetes reversal and prevention. So I'm happy to introduce today's expert, Michael C. Welcome, Michael.
Well, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this conversation.
Me too. Michael, for those of you that have not met him, is a health and wellness professional, and he has experience in sports performance, fitness, disease prevention, and management. Besides working in commercial fitness, corporate health, and medicine, he also has a master's in clinical exercise science and is a certified diabetes care and education specialist, as well as a national board certified health coach. So he really brings a broad range of experience to our conversation today. And I'm really excited that we get to talk about some things that are going to help you if you're thinking about preventing or reversing metabolic syndrome, prediabetes, or even type 2 diabetes. He loves working with individuals who want to be the best version of themselves, and I know that that's you. So, Michael, before we dive into some of the nuts and bolts, why don't you share with us how did you get interested in this field of health and what kind of took you on this journey through a number of fields that people don't always do together?
Yeah, that's a great question. All those credentials and experience just means I'm getting old, but I've had so many wonderful opportunities, in the health and wellness and fitness field. So, I graduated with a bachelor's degree in athletic training and sports medicine from Marietta College in Ohio, and I had gotten into the commercial fitness business, and then I went back to college for my master's in clinical exercise science at University of Rhode Island. And that just started me in more of a medical-based path. So working in cardiology, then I was able to, get a position at a specialty clinic in diabetes, and it's kind of fortuitous because, I have a lot of diabetes in my family. I remember as a kid growing up, my grandmother, she had type 2 diabetes is going in the 90s, which was probably, more type 1.5 because she wasn't that heavy. But back then we only had one oral medicine and insulin. So she was on insulin and then my mother was diagnosed with diabetes, siblings and so forth. And my wife is one of four, but she only has one sibling, and her three siblings all had type 1 diabetes. So it's interesting how, I fell into the diabetes field. I worked at a specialty clinic in Boston. I live here in Massachusetts. And then I worked at a community hospital setting in diabetes. And then my career was rerouted. I worked in corporate health and wellness. And now I'm back into cardiology. And so cardiology and diabetes really overlap. That's why we call it cardiometabolic health, right? Cardio meaning the heart and metabolic meaning, your metabolism or more of a diabetes or metabolic condition. So that's what I do now, but I've had tremendous opportunities. I found within recent years, I realized that telling people was an effective way of getting them to make positive lifestyle changes. So I got into the field of health coaching and became a board certified health coach. And that's more focusing on how we work with people, how we have people their best self show through and how they create their own vision and their own story, right? As opposed to, being the expert. I'm more comfortable being a coach for somebody to supporting them on their journey.
I love what you're sharing, Michael, about your journey through all these different kinds of experiences, bringing you to health coaching and what you do today. But I'm so curious, before college, like when you were in elementary school or as a kid, what do you think kind of fed your interest in going into the field of exercise, for example, and fitness in college?
Yeah, that's a great question. I ask my clients curious questions and to bring out their thoughts and emotions and just as you're doing now. So, I was very involved in sports growing up.
Mhm.
I had, an older sibling and a older brother and a younger brother and three sisters. But sports was a big part of our upbringing. Back then kids would just go to the playground and
Mm.
play basketball or baseball or whatever the sport may be. And then, so sports were important. I can remember growing up as a kid, my mother would do Jack LaLanne. Those of you may or may not know Jack
Yes.
LaLanne. He used to do a TV show, and it involved physical conditioning, and she used to do yoga. So those kind of influenced my path, and then, one opportunity led to another. But those are probably, I often tell, we often plant seeds. And if we nurture the
Mhm.
seeds with good soil and sunlight and water, we never know what's going to grow, right? And so here I am decades later, still in a field that I'm still passionate about. I still have a lot of energy and to help people on their journey.
I love that. It's so
Uh,
interesting. And it is interesting how sometimes maybe even things that don't seem like direct contributors to our choices have an influence. Like I think back, my grandparents also had diabetes and come from a family with a lot of diabetics. And so I think that also had an influence in, choosing to do this work in coaching for diabetes reversal. And as you learned about exercise and you got involved in these different areas, I'd like to start with some discussion about the physiology of exercise. So, what is it about exercise that is such a powerful lifestyle intervention when we're looking for better health?
yeah, yeah. Movement is medicine, right? Exercise is medicine, and it has there's so many ways that can impact our body, right? There's not a cell of our body that probably isn't impacted by movement or when we talk about exercise, more structured activity, right?
Mhm.
Um, it from our cardiovascular, our cardiorespiratory, our lungs and our hearts, to our musculoskeletal, our muscles and our bones, to our cognitive function, our brain. Um, you know, it impacts every part of our body, and it's like anything, right? It's a dose response. Some physical activities better than none. More is better than some, and you can do too much or not, activities that may not be appropriate for you. But that's the wonderful thing. It's free. It doesn't cost anything to move. Um, and the area of exercise and movement has evolved over the years, like so many other things, right? As we've learned more, exercise used to be very prescriptive when I started
Mm,
out, right?
yeah.
Do this amount at this intensity. Now it's more find what you enjoy, find movement. And we're appreciating that even small amounts, if I were just to get up now and walk in place, that has benefits in
Mhm.
terms of my glucose utilization, how my body uses glucose, as opposed to, sedentary sitting all day, and how that
Mhm.
has, negative implications for our health and well-being. So, yeah, we're constantly learning, but I like to simplify things. I don't think we need to complicate them. Meet somebody where they're at in their journey. Some people are fitness fanatics, right? And other people, for whatever reason, really are uncomfortable with movement or
Mhm.
activity. So we need to meet each person where they're at.
And speaking of where they're at, if someone, for example, knows that they've already gotten a diagnosis of metabolic syndrome or prediabetes, but maybe they don't really do any regular exercise, they might start one place where somebody that's got some movement going might need to start somewhere else, and somebody that's already pretty athletic or involved in sports somewhere else. So let's kind of look at those three groups. If someone doesn't really do any regular exercise, maybe has sedentary work or that their activity level is pretty sedentary, what would you suggest as a good place to start?
Yeah, I think the first thing is starting, right? Just start someplace. There's a lot of different ways to go. One could, you know, find a healthcare, a fitness professional or an exercise professional to support them. Um, you know, if they don't have those resources, I would get on a YouTube video, right? And do a virtual class. I do both. This morning, I met with a client. I have a 79-year-old client. I drove to her residence. She's maybe about 6 months recovering from a hip fracture.
Mm,
And then I did a virtual class with a couple clients this morning. So, but these could be recorded activities. You may want to ask your physician. There are certain things, again, not putting up limitations or barriers. Vast majority of people can initiate a low to moderate intensity activity or walking. There's
mhm,
no need to, get screened, but maybe confiding in your healthcare provider, just saying, I'm interested in starting an exercise program, and maybe they can support you on your journey, or maybe they would just encourage you. Maybe they could give you some resources. But I would just start, with small bouts of activity. The saying goes, it's easy to eat an elephant one bite at a time. So just, start with, 3 to 5 minutes, set an intention, right?
mhm,
Set a smart goal. I'm going to, walk 5 minutes 3 days this week,
mm.
around my house, inside my house, or around my residence, or around my neighborhood, and make it share that with somebody else, a friend or a loved one, so you have that accountability.
Oh, that's
And
so
then do it.
important. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love
And
that.
then so that's how that person would, I would start, just added some movement. And success begets success
Mm,
often. And always remember what the positive, right? Tend to have a negative bias. So we're saying, oh, I only walked twice this week. I didn't walk 3 times. I'm a failure. And that's just going to take you on the path to, self-defeating, right? Say, I walked twice. I wanted to walk 3 times. This week, I'm going to do that, right? So positive
mm.
reinforcement.
I really love that. And you mentioned setting SMART goals. For someone that's not used to that acronym, what does SMART stand for?
Yeah, it's instead of just saying, "Oh, I'm going to be more active." Well, what does
Mm,
that mean? So I would hone down a little bit, ask more curious questions of you, and say, SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time bound. So,
mhm.
specifically, what are you going to do to be more active? Well, it's been nice outside. I'd like to get fresh air. Okay. So what does that look like? I'm going to walk. I have a nice street I live on. I'm going to walk the street. Okay. When might you do that? What time works best in your schedule? Oh, I like to do it at the end of a day, transitioning. I get home from work before making dinner. It just makes for a nice transition.
Mhm.
So what time would that be? Oh, 5:30. Okay, yeah. That type of thing. How often are you going to do that? 7
Yeah.
days. Oh, okay. Is that realistic? Do you think how confident are you could do that 7? Well, I it's going to rain on Thursday, so try to make something that's achievable, and just
Yeah.
asking those questions, and then coming up with a SMART goal. Okay, you want to walk 3 times a week for 5 minutes. You're going to do it in the afternoon when you get home from work, that
Yeah.
type of thing.
That's such a great example. And I do think that makes a really big difference because, like you said, if we set kind of general goals without those details, then it's hard to know if we actually met them or not. And it's much harder to get motivated sometimes if we don't know exactly what we're aiming for, right? So that helps us to clarify our target and our goal. Now, say someone is in that medium group where they're walking for half an hour, 2 or 3 times a week, but they just got a diagnosis of prediabetes or diabetes. What would you recommend they add to their regimen in terms of movement that would be really helpful?
I do any recommending, you know, I would, ask them what they're interested in. How do they feel about this new diagnosis of prediabetes? Because really, I'm not the expert of their life. They're the expert of their life. They know themselves and their world a lot better than I know them. So, and chances are they've thought about this, the implications, what this means to them, this new diagnosis, and how did their healthcare provider share this information? Was it just in passing? Oh, your blood sugar's getting a little high. We'll look at prescribing a medication next time you come in, or was it a good conversation? And so I would find out, how do you feel about that you have prediabetes?
Yeah.
Well, my grandmother had diabetes, and that is the last thing I want, that type of thing. Okay. So this is something you really has caught your attention, and you want to do as much as you can to avoid the diagnosis.
Mhm.
And so then from there, I would say, what are you interested in doing? How are you looking to address this issue? And so if they came up with activity, yeah, I enjoy my workouts 2, 3 times a week. Most people, it's not a lack of knowledge. Most people know for most part, what they should be doing. But we have a lot of distractions. We live in a very stressful society. There's a lot of things going on, and I would say, oh, what would you? Yeah, I want to exercise more. Oh, what does that look like for you? Well, I've heard about weight training. This stuff, weight training. Oh, okay. So there, I would talk about maybe, what resources do you have? Do you have bands, exercise bands, dumbbells, milk jugs? What have you done in the past? Most people could say, 30 years ago, when I was in my 20s, I did this. So just curious questions, listening to them, and, asking more curious questions and seeing where they see themselves. So, certainly there is from a diabetes, a health and wellness and fitness aspect, when we can combine with some cardiovascular, the goal is 150 minutes, right? 30 minutes most days of the week of moderate intensity activity, twice a week, some type of resistance training, focusing on most muscle groups of the body. But we got to find out where their interests lie.
That's
And
so
then do they
important.
have more resources? But now with video, there's YouTube video, there's virtual classes, a lot of people can access those now.
So there are a lot of resources, like you say, for doing that. Now, what if someone asks about timing? Like, does it matter when in the day, if I'm really looking at optimizing my blood sugars, is there any timing that's better than others for me to do my movement? Or does it, I can just do it any time of the day and it's all the same?
I mean, certainly what's practical and achievable. Ideally, though, often after meals, depend upon the composition, what people are eating, there's going to be a rise in blood sugar.
Mhm.
And one way to lessen that, attenuate that, would be some activity after a meal. So it has a lot of benefits in terms of digestion, to leveling off blood sugar, that type of thing. So that might be one. How do you feel about, walking, engaging in some activity? Now, you're not going to engage in really vigorous activity
Right.
after a meal, but to help with digestion, to level off the blood sugars after meals would be a nice option.
I love
Often,
that.
for some people, early in the, before their day begins is a nice option, because sometimes we never know what the day will bring. Uh, I love my first thing in the morning workouts on my treadmill. It just really sets my day up.
Mhm.
Um, but that may not be appropriate for everybody. We got to find out, what's most appropriate for based upon the individual schedule, lifestyle.
Right. And I love the curiosity that drives that relationship, as we work with people and encouraging them to move in a direction that's going to really help them optimize their health. That is so helpful to learn what it is they're thinking, how does their life work, what's going to actually be a good fit for them, and all of those sorts of things. So exercise, obviously, and movement is so important to long-term control of blood sugars. What are some of the other interventions that you have used with your clients? Maybe you have some stories, I don't know, but things that you've seen has really been helpful to them in improving and optimizing their blood sugar control.
Yeah, one, I think, getting those loved ones and your support system and support network around you, so calling upon those. Sometimes it's a very personal thing. We often think that, oh, geez, I failed, right? Now it's diabetes. What's next? That we're flawed or there's something wrong with us versus this is common humanity. I mean, there are tens of millions of people with diabetes and 80 to 90 million of pre-diabetes. Many don't know it. So I would say,
Mhm.
congratulations to you. You know you have pre-diabetes. Now you have the opportunity to do something about it. And so, reaching out to friends and loved ones, sharing that information and saying, can you support me on my journey? Because we need some accountability, right? Often that makes us
Mhm.
better, the support and accountability. So I would do that, reaching out to people that maybe they're people that boy, I know my neighbor, she's an avid walker, maybe I could reach out to her. Or I have a friend that's a really good healthy cook, maybe I could tap into their knowledge and how to make some changes with my diet. Oh, so, and then stress, right? Or sleep. And obviously your healthcare team, calling on your healthcare team to support you, to maybe refer to a dietitian, or there are wonderful, what we call diabetes prevention programs at YMCAs and healthcare systems, seeing if there's a diabetes prevention program in your neighborhood, in your community. These are year-long programs of intensive lifestyle support and education that, that are available. Often in our health clubs now, there are exercise facilities, that are really more economical, maybe $19, $20 a month, no long-term contracts. So trying that, maybe you have a workout partner. So there's a lot of things. What I encourage you to do is just do a little self-reflection. We don't often do that. Think about it. Do a little thinking, you know, um, and then set um, a few action items that are a priority, that are consistent with your values, who you want to be in this world, how do you want to show up? And then just kind of tap into that and
Mhm.
understand, be kind to yourself and understand that it's um it's progress, it's not perfection, right? We're human beings. We're not human doers, we're human beings, and that we're not perfect.
Yes, and I think, having patience with ourselves as we grow and as we make changes and develop new habits can be so important because, I've often, thought that when we will look at something we didn't meet our goal and we talk to ourselves, we're like, oh, I failed because I didn't meet the goal I had stated, where actually I just had an opportunity to learn something about myself, learn something about, my environment, my situation, or somebody that I'm dealing with. And that learning opportunity is part of what helps us to grow and develop. So it's like nothing's wasted, even if it didn't turn out exactly the way maybe we had hoped or we had planned. And it is very much about the way we frame it in our minds more than about what the particular situation is. And I mean, even stress, right, is a creation of our mind. So as we pay attention to how we're thinking, then we are able to actually have a lot of control over how we feel in our emotional life and improve our relationships and all of those things. You talked about how important social support was. I think I've even seen research where diabetics with good social support systems lived longer if everything else, all the other factors were the same. Having good social support system was super important. So you
Yeah,
talked
I
about
mean
that,
that
right?
reframing, the
Yeah.
reframing. I couldn't agree with you more. We have more conversations with ourselves than anybody else. They may not be verbal conversations, but they're in our mind. And so
Mhm.
what we're saying to ourselves, and we know we have a an epidemic of loneliness,
Mm,
and the you know, coming out of the public health emergency. So social support is so important.
yes, it
And
is.
unfortunately,
So
home life for some people can be not ideal, right? So
mhm,
that could be another challenge.
totally. And I think we see a lot of that these days. So there are many things that people face. What about other interventions like sleep? How does sleep help us to manage our blood sugars?
Yeah, it's the foundation of everything, right? And we're learning more about sleep all the time, but we need to rest our body. And we there's some sleep hygiene, like any type of hygiene. We need to have good sleep hygiene habits around. And people that don't get sufficient sleep, it really adversely affects us in so many ways, right? Our appetite, our metabolism, um, our eating habits and eating patterns. So, so, really, uh, and just like activity, making small changes in our activity or eating habits, our sleep habits, are we going to the bed the same time? Are we getting up the same time? Is our environment conducive to sleep, right? Are we engaging in physical activity during the day to make the quality of our sleep better?
Mm,
And do we have issues around sleep? Do we have sleep apnea or some things like that we
mhm.
need to have a conversation with our healthcare provider? And do we need a
Yeah.
sleep study or something? Yeah, but it's foundational. And people that don't get enough sleep are at greater risk of diabetes, right?
Absolutely. Also, if someone isn't sure if they have sleep apnea, are there any things they should look out for that might be an indicator they should at least get it checked or talk to their care provider about? Like, what are some clues that I might be suffering from
Yeah,
sleep
I would
apnea?
talk to your if you have a partner, if you have a sleep partner, do I snore? Do I
Hmm.
wake up, all of a sudden, from a deep sleep? Um, yeah, usually snoring, and often it can be measured, your neck
Mm,
circumference. When you wake up, are you restful and ready to take on the day, or are you know, struggling to wake up and not getting restorative sleep. So, there are a lot of things. And now you can do sleep studies at home. You don't need to go to, special, outpatient clinics. But yeah, ask your partner. Um, Look at are you waking up at various times? And getting up to have a snack or something. If you do get up to go to the bathroom, can you fall asleep right away? And a lot of it has to do with those conversations in our mind. So coming up with
yeah.
strategies to help you get back to fall asleep.
Yeah. I think those are all aspects that are so important for people to consider and think about when they're looking to optimize their health. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. Now, before we close, are there any specific things, encouragement or practical tip or hack that you would encourage someone to think about or to do or consider as they're looking to optimize their blood sugars and their metabolism?
Yeah, don't be embarrassed, right? Don't think there's something wrong with you. The past is history, the future is a mystery. That's why God gave us a present. So, what can I do today? Surround yourself with people that will support you. There's so many resources out there, and in our social circles, our community, tap into those, take advantage of those, work with your healthcare provider. We have lots of resources out there, have conversations with your healthcare team, come
Mhm,
prepared, um, do your research, but sometimes, you need to put ideas and knowledge and information into action. So sometimes we get overwhelmed with the knowledge and the information, and we don't take those initial steps and realize that that's your first step. It's not your last step,
mhm,
and build upon it. Constantly build upon it. Like what you said, a lot of self-reflection. Take a moment just
mhm.
to think. We always go, go, go. Think, and with a piece of paper maybe, and jot down, what's your vision? Where do you want to be in a month from now or 3 months from now in terms of your health and well-being? And then, come up with a couple steps. Keep it simple, right? Not don't overcomplicate it, and share those steps with others, right? Um, get some accountability, some support network, to go on that journey. People that are going to raise you up, right? Be around people that are going to
Yeah.
raise you up and not beat you down. Um, yeah, and do it with a smile, right? Embrace it. And if you don't like what you tried, just try something new, right? You know, we all fall down. You know, those that succeed are the ones that get up. You know,
Mhm.
they fall down, they get up. They fall down, they get up, right? And maybe you just want to reach up to somebody. Maybe occasionally you need to reach up to somebody to give you a hand to get up. Nothing wrong with that. And be positive. Um, but be honest with yourself, right? If you find yourself just
Yeah.
making excuses or, well, then there's a problem there, right? Um, yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but some ideas to think about.
I love that. I really, really appreciate what you've shared with us today, Michael. I think this is also valuable. And that time to think that you've emphasized is something that we often struggle with in our busy, distracted lives. And yet it is so important, especially when we're wanting to make long-term changes that have long-term impact on like how long we're on this earth, how long we're around to enjoy our families or our grandchildren or what have you, and taking the time now to think about that and really be clear about our vision, where we want to go, what are the results that we want to experience, is so critical to actually experiencing those results. It's kind of like GPS when you're traveling, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, you got to have clear idea of where you are now and where you want to go and how you're going to get there. And like you said, there are a lot of ways to take the journey, but these are some fundamental steps that I think will be helpful for everyone. And it's like I like to say to our audience, remember that health is wealth and it comes by choice, not by chance. So I just want to say thank you for being with us here today, Michael. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.